What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This is The Catch. I'm your host, Lawrence, aka Law. And this is a channel where I'm going to be talking primarily about fantasy football, but overall just anything sports talk, to be honest with you. And in this video, this is the part 2 to a series that I'm putting together over each running back that you should pick in each round of your drafts coming up this 2019 fantasy football season. Let's get right into it. Alright guys, so I want to just start off by saying you got to excuse my spectacles that I've got going on here. Make a long story short, I went in for my annual contact and eye exam, things like that. Was prescribed some new contacts. My eyes didn't take well to the contacts at all. So I was hit with a little bit of a red eye. Went back to the doctor today. Told me that I got a little bit of irritation in it. And just to go ahead and take my contacts out and wear my glasses for the next 5 days. So again, I just wanted to start off by saying, excuse my spectacles. I know you can see the glare in it and everything, and it's frustrating for me. It may not be to you, but I just wanted to point that out. But again, let's just jump right into it. Again, this is going to be a video over each running back that you should draft in each round. In my first video, I went over the first 3 rounds. So you can actually check that out right here. I'll go ahead and link the video to the video that I'm currently doing now. But to go ahead and jump right into it, this is a guy that I personally love. It's a guy that I targeted last year, that I went after last year. And this year, he's going in the 4th round. He's actually averaging probably first pick in the 4th round. And it's my guy with the Detroit Lions, Kerryon Johnson. So Kerryon really came onto the scene last year before a little bit of a knee injury came and kind of ended his season. But he was on track. He was doing really well for the team. He was getting more and more involved in the scheme of the offense, and you could just tell Matt Patricia and the offensive coordinators over there, they really wanted to run the ball, and they knew Kerryon Johnson was the guy to do it for him. Matt Patricia had a little bit of a relationship with LeGarrette Blount, who was with the Patriots the season before, and so was Matt Patricia. So I don't know if it was kind of a bromance that they had going on or whatever the case may be, but for the first the first few games of the season, LeGarrette Blount, shared a whole lot of snap counts with Kerryon Johnson, and it didn't take very long for the team to realize Kerryon Johnson was the guy that really needed to be getting the volume. He was just making all the plays. He had 118 rushing attempts, totaled 641 yards, and he averaged 5.4 yards a carry, which was 6th best in the NFL last season. Before the injury, he was actually top 15 2 times, finished as a top 25 running back a total of 3 times all season long. And again, this is just based off of 10 games. So again, top 25 3 times, and all again while getting 56% of the snap share with LeGarrette Blount. But so he's a guy that I really think that you can go after next year. To make a solid RB2, I wouldn't venture out as far as to say, go get Kerryon Johnson as your first running back to become your RB1. Now, I do believe that he could be a guy that could put up RB1 numbers, maybe not every week, but definitely on average, getting close to putting up those RB1 numbers for you. He was on pace to get about 188 total carries last season, and on pace to rush a little over 1,000 yards, 1,025 if you want to, for all you mathematicians out there. With those type of numbers comes more touchdowns, things of that sort, and with more touchdowns comes better situations for your team moving forward. More touchdowns means if a guy, for whatever reason, doesn't score, maybe one of your wide receivers, maybe your tight end, a guy who can score multiple touchdowns really carries the weight of the guy who didn't score a touchdown that week. But he's a guy that you can get in the 4th round. And as of right now, I'm just talking about rushing. I'm not even talking about his involvement in the passing game, like I really think he's going to get this year. Now, I know they have Theo Riddick there, who's really been their go-to in passing downs in the past years. But Kerryon Johnson really showed that he could do it all last year. And I think he really surprised everybody who wasn't targeting him last year. It was no surprise to me, only because he was a guy that I was targeting. I mean, he's a guy that I know was coming out of college, and I knew he could perform at the next level. It was just a matter of time before he could do so. And man, was he going to make it a great year had he been able to stay healthy, things like that, and been able to finish out the season. So again, he was on pace to average 188 total rushes and rushed for a little over 1,000 yards at 1,025. Now, I've been doing a little bit of reading, things like that, and I came across a report where offensive coordinator Darrell Bevel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, stated, well, and this is actual quotes, guys. This is actual quotes from what he said in this report. And he says, end quote, "Will always be about running the football. We want to be a tough, hard-nosed, physical football team." And guys, he had a little bit more to say, but that's really all I had to hear to know that Kerryon Johnson can be that go-to guy for you guys this year. Now, on a little bit of a downside, I don't want to make it seem a lot of these guys going in the later rounds are going in the later rounds for a reason. Now, in my opinion, Kerryon Johnson, the only reason, obviously, coming off of the injury, yeah, I get it. But another big thing is the Lions actually picked up C.J. Anderson. They released LeGarrette Blount, but they picked up C.J. Anderson. And C.J. Anderson was a guy who 2 years ago was a guy who rushed for over 1,000 yards with the Denver Broncos. And then he jumped around from multiple teams last season and ended up finishing the season with the Los Angeles Rams. And he was able to come in the playoffs and was really successful. He actually came in and totally torched my Dallas Cowboys in the second round of the playoffs last year. So, bit of a bummer, but it is what it is. But that's C.J. Anderson. C.J. Anderson can be a guy who's a pinball, and he can be a guy who can steal some carries from Kerryon. But in my opinion, Kerryon is the younger guy. He's had plenty of time to go ahead and get that knee healed, things of that sort. So again, guys, Kerryon Johnson going in the 4th round, Detroit Lions, #1 starting running back. In my opinion, go ahead and lock it in. Go ahead and go after him. I definitely won't be hesitating to go after him in the 4th round. He just brings plenty of value. So with that being said, moving on, my #2 pick in the 4th round, going as on average the 4th pick, and this guy was actually a close second with Kerryon Johnson. The only reason he wasn't is because he's a rookie this season, so you always got to be a little skeptical. And it's the 4th round, so it feels like somewhat of a reach, but I'll break it down to you and let you know why it's not all that big of a reach. So the guy I'm talking about is a guy out of Iowa State, again a rookie, David Montgomery, who as of right now is actually on the depth chart as the #1 running back for the Chicago Bears right now. He was the Chicago Bears' first pick in the 2019 draft in the 3rd round. The Bears didn't pick until the 3rd round, so the first guy that they went after was David Montgomery. He was brought in to replace Jordan Howard, who, to say it lightly, really struggled last year. Jordan Howard really struggled last year. You can tell Matt Nagy wanted to get that running game going. He wanted to put the ball in Jordan Howard's hands, and Jordan Howard just didn't cut it for him. So they targeted David Montgomery as their first pick, and I watched a lot of film on this guy, and by all means, he's not the fastest guy on the field, but man, does he have a lot of burst. He's bursting through the holes. He's very elusive, can get out to the corners and get up the edge. And he's a guy who is very physical. Iowa State used him in a lot of the red zone carries. So he's a guy who can go in and punch it in from the 10-yard line, 5-yard line. He's going to get a lot of red zone work. The Chicago Bears have a great defense, and which means that the offense is going to be on the field a lot. Now, that's why I believe David Montgomery is going to be the workhorse for him. He showed that he can actually catch, but overall, he's a guy who can catch a ball. He was used heavily in the passing game there at Iowa State, and I tried to kind of do a little bit of research to see if maybe Iowa State saw any of NFL caliber defenses. I know that's a little bit tough, but they didn't go up against an Alabama, but they did go up against Oklahoma, where he did very well. He went 21 attempts, 82 yards, and he averaged about 3.9 yards per carry, and he actually punched one in for a touchdown over there. But again, he's a guy who can kind of do it all. He's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. Like I said, he's not the fastest guy, but he's absolutely a guy who can go and get that 5 to 10 yards. He can punch in that, that first and goal, that third and goal, whatever it may be. He's going to be a guy who's going to be able to get plenty of touchdowns. And again, they've got a great defense, which leads to more offense on the field, which leads to more than likely playing from the lead. And in my opinion, that just leads to more running the ball. Mitch Trubisky, I don't want to say is a liability as far as passing the ball, things like that, but they don't have a whole lot of weapons in the passing game. Anthony Miller, Taylor Gabriel, they do well. Trey Burton at tight end. But in my opinion, everything's going to come from the running back position. You, again, would not hesitate to take him, and I know I say that a lot, but I feel really confident in a lot of these guys, and I've done my homework and I've done my research, and that's the reason that I'm confident in that. But Jordan was traded. Jordan Howard was traded to the Eagles last season. Again, he was a bit of a disappointment, and that's the main reason that they went after David Montgomery. Just to break it down to you, Jordan Howard had 250 rushing attempts, and he didn't even rush for 1,000 yards, guys. He ran for 935 yards. And for a guy of his size and his capabilities and his age, I think he's only 24, maybe 25, maybe 26. Don't quote me on it. I'm not 100% sure on that. But he's a younger guy. He's a guy that should be able to carry that workload. He's a guy that the Chicago Bears went after in the draft also. So he had a lot of responsibility, and Matt Nagy wanted to put the responsibility in Jordan Howard's hands, and he was just unacceptable. A 3.7 yards per carry on 250 attempts is just unacceptable for a guy that size. And again, Montgomery is a guy who can come in and be that workhorse. He can run the ball hard. He can punch in those touchdowns, and it's going to be no problem for him to be able to average more yards per carry than Jordan Howard did last year, in my opinion. And so the biggest thing is he's going to be working with Tariq Cohen, who's a little bit of a flex guy. They flex him in every once in a while, and he's just a playmaker. And so, in my opinion, Tariq Cohen is not that workhorse. Is not that workhorse. He's going to be a guy who can run, get you those big plays, things of that sort. But Montgomery is going to be the go-to back. He's going to be the workhorse for that team. And he's going to be a go-getter on a great team, on a team that competed really well last year, a team that made it to the playoffs, and some people were predicting them to go all the way to the Super Bowl. That's a little bit of a stretch for me, but hey, you know how it goes. Some of these analysts, they just want to reach so that when it does happen, they can say, I told you so, which I totally respect, because I'm gonna be doing that a little bit too. You got to take your reaches, you got to take your chances. But overall, David Montgomery, fourth pick of the fourth round on average is his ADP, or average draft position. But David Montgomery, another lock in. So lock it in, boys and girls. He's going to be a guy who can put up those RB2 numbers for you on a weekly basis. So moving on to the fifth round. Now, this is a guy that I absolutely love, and a guy that I hope I can get my hands on this season. He's coming off of an injury, but it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal, according to what reports are saying. But he's a guy that's got an average draft position of the fifth round, second pick in the fifth round. But it's my guy from Seattle, Chris Carson. I absolutely love Chris Carson this year, and I can say it in 3 words for you: volume, volume, volume. He's going to be a guy that is in a perfect situation. He took over as the RB1 last year when Rashad Penny went down with a little bit of an injury, and Rashad Penny, was a guy that Seattle actually drafted, and a guy that I really thought highly of coming out of the draft last season. Rashad Penny was a guy that they drafted and went down with an injury a little bit early on in the season. And Chris Carson really came in and took the offense by the horns. He finished with 247 rushing attempts, which was 7 amongst running backs in the NFL last year. And he actually finished with a little over 1,100 yards, 1,151 rushing yards last year, which was 5th most amongst running backs last year. And he actually finished in the top 10 4 times last season, and also had 5 weeks in the top 20. So this is a guy that you're getting in the 5th round that's going to be able to put up those kind of numbers for you, and I'll absolutely take it every day of the week, 100 times. If I'm in 100 leagues, which I'm not, but I would take him 100 times if I absolutely could get my hands on him. And again, guys, we're talking about Chris Carson, who plays with the Seattle Seahawks. And again, another report that I've been reading, I do a lot of research, guys. I do a lot of digging, and I want to come to you guys with straight facts. So another report that I was reading is offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks, Brian Schottenheimer, says, we want to run the football. We want to be a physical, but also we want to be a physical football team, but we also want to take our shots. And their main reason for doing that is Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks have a little bit of a lack of depth when it comes to wide receivers. Now, Doug Baldwin did retire last season. I wish him the best. I said that in my very first video, but Doug Baldwin was a guy that I always went after whenever I was younger to try and pick him up on my fantasy leagues, because he was a guy that I knew could come in and be very clutch. But again, the Seattle Seahawks don't have a whole lot of depth. They have Tyler Lockett, who I absolutely love also. Great wide receiver that I wouldn't mind getting my hands on either. I'd rather have Chris Carson if I was going to be picking somebody off the football team, maybe even Russell Wilson, but I wouldn't mind pairing up Chris Carson and Russell Wilson if I could do that. That's no big deal to me. But out of the combine, they wanted to stack that wide receiver core a little bit, and they actually went after DK Metcalf, who had a stellar performance in the combine, and he was very good at Ole Miss this past season, but he was just a guy that they were hoping could come in and absolutely steal the show, and his upside is unbelievable. But again, this is going to be a team that absolutely runs the football. They're going to run the football way more than they pass. I wrote it down here, but in 2018, the Seattle Seahawks ran the ball 534 times, and they only passed the ball 427. Now, I know what you're thinking, Lawrence. That's only over 100 plays in difference. So again, 534 times they ran the football last year, 427 times they passed the football. And again, it's only a little bit over 100 play difference there. But my biggest thing is this team is going to be running the football. Chris Carson got just under 250 carries last season at 247. So let's just say Chris Carson comes in and he sees just a little below that. Let's just say he's going to be the starter as of right now. There's no question about it. Now, Rashad Penny is going to be healthy. Reports say that Chris Carson will be healthy come training camp. But let's just say that he takes a few steps back as far as volume goes. So let's just say he loses 25 snaps. So that just means he's going to be getting anywhere between 225 rushing attempts per game, and I absolutely love that type of volume. I mean, if you wanted to take a little bit of a bigger step, you could actually get Rashad Penny. I don't think that would be a bad pickup either, just because I really think that that's going to be a very split backfield between the two. But we're going to be seeing 534 rushing attempts, maybe even more, according to the reports that I've been reading, as far as them wanting to be a team that really runs the football. So Chris Carson, again, guys, is a guy going in the 5th round, going pretty early in the 5th round, who can bring you absolute big numbers, absolutely huge numbers, a guy who could possibly put up RB1 numbers on a consistent basis, and it's a guy that you're getting in the 5th round. So if you're going after Chris Carson as your 2nd or maybe even your 3rd running back, you're working in the right direction as far as your running backs go. He's a guy that can come in and really make it happen for your team. You got to believe me, guys. I've been doing my research, and this is a guy that I absolutely trust, and a guy that I really hope personally I can get my hands on next season. Moving forward, another guy going in going in the fifth round, going right after Chris Carson, actually on ADP, going fifth round, third pick of the fifth round. This was a little bit difficult for me, only because there's not a whole lot of what am I looking for? There's not a whole lot of running backs in this round that I would absolutely love to target. But this guy is Kenyan Drake. He's coming off of a decent year last year, and believe it or not, he snuck in to finish as the RB17 last year in most PPR leagues. And he really got most of his numbers in the passing game. So if you're in a league where it's half point PPR, even full point PPR, he's going to be a guy that you could target, and I really think he could be giving you a lot of upside. And I'm confident in Kenyan Drake, but at the same time, I'm not real confident. He's a guy that can make it happen for you, but he also has a big downside. He was targeted a total of 73 times last year, which was 12th among running backs last season, and he caught 53 of the 73 targets, which was 13 amongst running backs last year. He's got very good hands, only dropped 6 passes last year, but again, he got most of his volume in the passing game, and it's going to be a little bit different of a situation this year because Adam Gase was their offensive coordinator last year, and he's moved on now to the New York Jets. So it's going to be a little bit different of a situation. In my opinion, they didn't really use Kenyan Drake the way that they should have. He really is a playmaker, and again, I know I've said it several times just talking about him, but he's a guy that's got great hands, and he's a guy that can do a little bit of everything. But again, it starts to get a little bit tricky in these rounds. Kenyan is being taken in the same round as James White and Tariq Cohen, and then obviously Chris Carson. But James White and Tariq Cohen are going after Kenyan Drake in some mock drafts and things like that I've been seeing. But the only reason that I would be going with Kenyan Drake in this round, and the biggest reason is, again, the guys going behind him, James White and Tariq Cohen. The main reason I'd be staying away from James White is the committee there in New England is an absolute fantasy nightmare. You don't ever know when you're going to be able to start the guy. One week he's going to put up 25, 30 points. The next week he's going to put you 5. You'd be lucky to even see double digits. So James White is a guy that I like a lot if they didn't have 15,000 running backs running the ball for him, even fullbacks running the ball for him, or you know how Bill Belichick is. He's doing all kinds of crazy. I almost dropped the curse word there, but he always doing a lot of crazy stuff there, making play calls that you wouldn't expect. So with that instability, James White is a guy that makes me really nervous, and I'm just staying away from all things New England Patriots running backs next season. May take a little bit of a reach on N'Keal Harry, who was drafted by the New England Patriots. But other than that, I'm staying away from all the running backs. And again, Tariq Cohen is a guy who I had last year, and he did very well for me. He wasn't a guy that I started on a weekly basis, but when I did start him, he actually put up numbers for me, and he did really well. And he actually had a good stretch of the last part of the season last year. But he's just a guy that is not going to be the workhorse back. He's not going to be a guy that can do it on a weekly basis. You're either getting 30 points or, again, you're getting 5 to 10 points. And just that instability overall really makes me nervous. But again, there is a bit of a downside to Kenyan Drake. Like I said, there is going to be a new play caller in Miami. And it's just going to be difficult to tell what type of role they're going to have Kenyan Drake in. But I think if they put him in the right role and they scheme him in very well, he can be a guy that can come up and put up those RB2 type of numbers for you. But that's really it as far as Kenyan Drake goes. I have a few good things to say. I have a few bad things to say. So it's just kind of take your pick in the 5th round. It's going to be Chris Carson, who is no-brainer to me in my opinion, or it's going to be Kenyan Drake, or it's going to be James White or Tariq Cohen. And so you really kind of pick your poison as far as those guys go, but Kenyan Drake out of those guys would be the guy that I side with, because I think that he's got minimal committee, and he can come in if schemed incorrectly and be a solid RB2 for your fantasy team next year. So this is where it gets into some of the better rounds, in my opinion, just because you're looking at guys who you can really start making reaches for. You're getting into the 6th, even the 7th round here. And this is a guy that I really don't think is much of a reach, and I broke him down in my first video, and he's a guy that I really hope, again, similar to Chris Carson, that I can get my hands on this season. But he's going in the 6th round, 9th pick in the 6th round, LA Rams, Darrell Henderson. And he's really the only guy that I would go with in the 6th round. He's the safest bet. He's got all the upside in the world. But again, Darrell Henderson with the LA Rams going in the 6th round, 9th pick of the 6th round. But he was brought in this year in the draft in the 3rd round, and he was a guy that the Rams actually traded up to get. But he fell into the perfect situation. If you haven't heard, I'm here to tell you, Todd Gurley has a little bit of a lingering knee issue, which most analysts are diagnosing as arthritis in the knee. Something that he built up during college, and something that's now lingering with him and now pestering him in the NFL. So again, Darrell Henderson, in my opinion, is a guy who couldn't have landed in a better situation. Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network actually released a statement on June 4th, and I'm actually recording this on June 13th. So on June 4th, Ian Rappaport, again of the NFL Network, released a statement stating Gurley's days as a every down bell cow are probably over. And Henderson is a guy who can come in and take the workload. I don't want to shy away from the fact that Todd Gurley is an absolute fantasy beast. He's in the NFL in general, an absolute monster. And I'm not here to tell you, oh, Todd Gurley's not going to play next season, he should just retire. Absolutely not. Todd Gurley is young, he's hungry, and according to some things and some statements that he released, he said something along the lines of, I dealt with worse in college. This is nothing serious. And of course he's going to say that just because he doesn't want the fan base getting worried. He doesn't want his coaches getting worried. He just wants to play football. He's a football player, and he's a hell of a ball player. So I'm not here to take anything away from Todd Gurley. I'm just here to tell you that Darrell Henderson is absolutely a guy that you can go out and get in the 6th, maybe even the 7th round. And hell, if he drops in the 7th round, you better scoop this guy up, because somebody will, and he will come back to bite you in the ass. I'm just here to tell you. But as of June 11th, which was 3 days ago, again, I'm recording this on June 14th, Todd Gurley was not taking part in OTAs, and training camp is right around the corner. So again, if the news continues to trend in the direction that it's heading with Todd Gurley, Darrell Henderson is absolutely a guy that I'll be targeting. He's a guy, again, who can be that workhorse back, who can handle the workload of 200 and plus rushing attempts. And again, I'm not here to take anything away from Todd Gurley. If you can get your hands on Todd Gurley in the 2nd or the 3rd round, I would take him personally. But I'm not taking him. It would have to be late part of the 2nd to the 3rd round for me to reach out and grab Todd Gurley, simply because let's just say it's a situation where Kawhi Leonard right now playing the finals game. I wish I could have it on behind me, but I don't know the YouTube regulations with all that. But similar to how Kawhi Leonard was. Kawhi Leonard was with the Spurs last season and sat out because he knew he wasn't well. Coach Pop got really pissed, went ahead and traded him for DeMar DeRozan, and Kawhi really limited himself this year, even with the Toronto Raptors, and now look at him. He's absolutely dominating this far into the playoffs and into the finals. He's having one of the best playoff runs we've seen in history, period. So again, Todd Gurley can Todd Gurley can be a guy that actually comes in later part of the season and hindering anything Darrell Henderson has been doing for you in the first half of the season. So let's just say Darrell Henderson is absolutely killing it for you in the first half of the season. That's great. You're happy. You're excited. But here comes Todd Gurley, and he's going to be finishing. So Darrell Henderson is going to give you the perfect first half of the season. Here comes Todd Gurley bringing up the rear, who's going to absolutely destroy your playoff hopes, destroy your, I don't know if you guys call it the Super Bowl or just the championship game in y'all's fantasy football league. But Todd Gurley is going to be a guy who lingers around Darrell Henderson. And so it's just a situation where you're just going to have to live with it. You got to be able to know Darrell Henderson is going to be a guy, and I'm just speaking from example. Todd Gurley could come in and they could absolutely split the volume all season long. Or again, Todd Gurley could be a guy who kind of holds out, gets a few carries throughout the season, and then really destroys everything you're hoping Darrell Henderson provides for you. So if you're going to go after Darrell Henderson, in my opinion, he's got to be a RB3, maybe even a flex position, so that he doesn't absolutely shoot you in the foot come playoff times, because that's starting to become a new thing with players. We saw it with Kevin Durant, who played a hellacious amount this year, ended up rupturing his Achilles, and I wish him nothing but the best on his recovery also. But we're going to start seeing that more with athletes. They know their body better than anybody else, and they work like absolute freaks. And so, again, Todd Gurley can be a guy who holds out for the first half of the season. Darrell Henderson carries you through the first half of that season. Towards the back end of the season, Todd Gurley comes in the playoffs of your fantasy football league, and if you're putting too many chips in on Darrell Henderson, he can be a guy that comes and shoots you in the foot, in my opinion. And that's just me taking a little bit of a leap and saying that that's a possibility that it does play out that way. But moving on to another one of my favorite guys in the draft, going in the 7th round. He's averaging, his ADP average draft position is 7.4, which is 7th round, averaging 4th pick in the 7th round. But it's a guy who's been in the league for a little while, and he really shows that he can put up numbers for you on a pretty consistent basis. And the guy that I'm talking about is Lamar Miller. If you don't follow me on Twitter, it's @thecatch_law. I put up a post about him the other day. Also, if you don't follow me on Twitter, you can catch me on Instagram. Also, @thecatch_law, and that's the catch, just like the channel _law. Again, my name is Lawrence, so Law, and that's why I go by Law. So if you don't follow me on the social medias, I definitely encourage you to do so. I'm always posting up content and releasing a little bit more content more consistently on my social media outlets also. But again, Lamar Miller, ADP of the 7th round, 4th pick in the 7th round. But he's a guy who's a starter on his team all the way. He's had his up and downs in the last few seasons, but he really came out and had a solid 2018. So it says he rushed for just under 1,000 yards, actually averaged 973 on the ground last year, which was 11th in the NFL. So again, 973 yards, which was 11th best in the NFL last season. And he actually rushed for 210. He had 210 rushing attempts, which was really well also at 13th best in the NFL. And he had a really good snap share count. He really didn't have much of a committee there. He had Alfred Blue, Deontay Foreman was still kind of had the lingering issues, things of that sort. But he had 69% of the workload last year. But he's a guy that's getting up there in age, but he's a guy who can absolutely carry the workload. And again, he's a starter for his football team and a team that's actually very competitive in the AFC with DeAndre Hopkins, my number one receiver in the NFL right now, Deshaun Watson. They've got a very good defense that they're putting together over there. So again, Lamar Miller is a guy who can see a lot of volume. He sees a lot of really good attempts out of the backfield as well. But he's just a guy that you can pick up late, who's going to be a starter and who can be a solid number 2 running back for your football team. But again, the running backs at the Texans, they don't have very much depth. Deontay Foreman, the last update that I saw on him was that he still had a little bit of a lingering issue. He wasn't 100% yet. And Lamar is a guy who can put you top 20 numbers almost on a regular basis. And he's only 27 years old, so it's not like he's 30-something like, Frank Gore, who, Frank Gore is a GOAT. I'm not going to argue that at all. But he's only 27 years old, so he is a guy who can handle that type of a workload. And a guy that I absolutely trust. And a guy that I know will get over 200 carries again this year, even with even if D'Onta Foreman does come back, kind of show a little bit of flashes. Lamar Miller is the go-to guy at Houston. He's a guy that I absolutely trust, and a guy that I will be targeting as a solid RB2 for the off season. For the time of the year where the bye weeks start to come around, and also if any type of injuries start to occur with my fantasy team and it starts to kind of break down, you can always trust Lamar Miller to go out there and give you a solid performance. Now, I'm not saying to expect the 20-30 point games from him like you would with Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, a lot of those guys. I'm just saying Lamar Miller can go out there, put a solid performance on for your team, and he's going to do nothing but benefit your team, and he's not going to hold your team back. So Lamar Miller, again, is a guy that I would absolutely be targeting in the later rounds in order to solidify myself at the running back position. But again, guys, just to name off the guys that I went over, Kerryon Johnson, average draft position of the 4th round, is a great pickup. David Montgomery, again, 4th round pickup. I would absolutely love to get my hands on him. And Chris Carson is a go-to guy, 5th round, that you can pick up, who can bring absolute numbers to your team, possibly even RB1 numbers. And Kenyan Drake is a guy who's also going in the 5th round. And he's going around guys like James White and Tariq Cohen. Kenyan Drake, in my opinion, with the new coaching staff going on around in the new play calling, if he's used correctly, Kenyan Drake can come on and be a great PPR choice for you moving forward. Darrell Henderson, average draft position of the 6th round, is a guy that I absolutely love too, who in my opinion will be splitting volume with Todd Gurley there in LA, but is a guy that you can get pretty late, who can bring you tons of upside, especially if the news of Todd Gurley continues to trend in the direction that it does. And a guy who's going to solidify you, be a solid overall pick going really late, 7th round, Lamar Miller, great pickup, guys. All these guys I would love to put all on my team. If I could get them all, absolutely. But you got to pick up your quarterbacks, your tight ends, your wide receivers, and those are more videos that I'll be releasing moving forward. So guys, thank y'all so much for coming by and watching the video. If you like the content, I encourage you to subscribe. Again, my name is Lawrence, aka Law. This is The Catch, and where I'll be breaking down fantasy football all season long. I'm going to make it a year-round thing where I come in and talk all things fantasy football, and then just overall all things sports, baseball, NBA, golf, you name it. I'm a big sports guy. But again, it's called The Catch. Tell your friends, tell your family, especially, or even yourself if you're really into fantasy football. I am going to continue to go in depth. I am going to continue to do my research so I can bring you the big facts week in and week out. I'm planning on posting about 2 videos a week, one midweek, one towards the weekend. So let's call it Wednesday, Thursday, midweek, and call it Saturday through Sunday. I'll be posting, again, 2 videos a week. May even bless y'all with my gorgeous face 3 times a week if you're lucky. But again, guys, thank y'all so much. If you like the content, please subscribe. Please slap a like on the video. Again, tell your family, tell your friends. Thank you again for coming by. Peace.